Okay, so if you're a caretaker over these extraordinary vehicles, as owner or mechanic, a friend helping an owner, I just point out that you are maintaining history. You have to have some often other motivators to do this, because it is so frustrating working on some of these Audis until you know the tricks of the trade. I had done a lot of work on my valve train after replacing my cam belt at around 100,000. I did not get a good seal on these valve covers. One was catastrophically leaking. This side actually did the best, but what I found is this fixed loom remains in the way, and I don't know why I didn't think about it. I researched and I found on forums that you're supposed to remove the connectors where it connects down to the engine. This one has been removed on the other side. The shorter one here is air conditioning. The longer one goes to like a motor mount. Simple way of doing this is kind of push in on this. You know, if you see, notice how that goes up. It doesn't have to go, but if you can push down on that just a little bit and push the connector in and out, it'll pull off very easily without using picks and so forth. So it's the same way. Anyhow, so to remove this side, you definitely need to remove the intake tube and intake air box. This one's prepped to go, but now I'm seeing the leak was substantially on the other side, not on this side. I don't know if I'm going to disturb this. I'm probably going to leave well enough alone. This other side had issues. One being, I was breaking these connectors because I couldn't move the wire looms out of the way. You must disconnect the 3 connectors and move these looms out of the way to give yourself this much room to work around the engine. Oh, and about these Torx 30 bolts. Let me show you my wrench. Well, I found the work the very best is to get these Stubby Torx sockets. You would definitely need this if you ever have to take these caps off. I've shattered probably 3 or 4 different Torx bits trying to remove these. The standard bits. You must have stubbies to get that to get those out. But I would basically just get a stubby with a universal joint and so while I don't see it now, oh well. The issue I had was that wire loom was in the way, and where the gasket goes over there into this valley, and then it goes back up in the air and back down. It wasn't leaking up on the top side of the motor, it was leaking obviously on the front, and then it drips down following gravity and the wind flow. And I assumed I had made mistakes somehow on this. I switched this out, and it just barely, you can barely get that. You do have to remove both of the cams. I mean, not from the motor, you need to loosen them up. But I'd switched this cam chain tensioner out, and you have to lock the motor all in place and then that good stuff. But anyhow, I had a chronic leak because the gasket, as it went over here, because I had this wire loom in the way, it moved out of place and it broke when it was tightened down, and it was leaking like a sieve all down the front of the motor. There's nothing I could do to stop it. I removed all the bolts, lifted the cover up in the air, put more RTV in, tried to reseal it, and it's probably a year and a half later now. I don't drive this car all the time. Fortunately, I have other vehicles, but it's time to get the Audi on the road, and I bit the bullet to try to remove this wire loom harness, and I'm just shocked how easy it is. There was a little bit of surgery involved with it. Trying to remove these connectors, the way they work best is when you push down on this. I don't know if you notice that. It lifts that center slot tab up, and then you can pull this off. Sometimes you push it in, push the connector in, push down on this kind of rigid thing, and then it'll allow it to slide out. So you don't have to pry in there with tools and end up damaging things. Do have to remove the dipstick, but there are a number of zip ties that Audi has a zip tie on the dipstick bracket. You have to cut that. It's got a few more zip ties going down there, probably three additional ones. I'm on the fence about reinstalling the zip ties, but just to show you where those are located, I put this up on jack stands and give myself more working room. And the air conditioner is rather easy. It plugs in right here. Right there. The other one plugged in up there on top of that thing. I guess it's a motor mount. I'm not sure why there's a part of the wiring harness plugs in there. That one's tough to get out. I don't know if you can see it or not, but the connector's on top of that thing. There's another connector on the other side of the motor, similar place, and a connector on the bottom of the oil pan, and then one that's like on the back of the alternator somehow. So, like I said, the biggest thing is well, there's also these things. I was able to use a little crowbar, like one of these, and pry these out without damaging them, so I can reuse them. Otherwise, you're cutting this clip and zip tying through the hole that's left, which that's perfectly fine to do to keep it in place. But the regular alternator does not, and this is 2006 GBK, the Burger King motor. The alternator doesn't seem to tie into that. And I haven't removed the other side yet. I've noticed that I'm not really getting a leak on the passenger side. It's really that driver's side one right now. Before I did all this work, I did have a leak on the passenger side. The passenger side is a little bit easier to get to, even with that wire loom in the way. But I think I'm probably going to plug things back in over here go on my merry way and see if it's leaking, if it continues to leak. But anyhow, I thought I'd add this to the community. Oh yes, and then obviously you do have to remove the pan shield on the bottom here. And just another note about air compressors and air suspension. Don't be so tempted. Just throw out that air suspension. You can find rebuild kits for these air compressors online for under $100, and it makes it as good as new. Because these air pumps are so expensive, I personally think they should be rebuilt at about 60,000 miles. Just pull the shield down, get access to it, a couple 10mm bolts, quick disconnects for the air lines, just mark things. I'm real big on this. Using color-coded twisty ties. You notice I have them on a few places, but that's especially important in the front of the motor. But now that I've got that valve cover removed, oh, I also changed out my air conditioner compressor. This is a fantastic improvement. I have ice cold air for about $200. So I had a struggle trying to find a rebuilt compressor. Somebody sent me one damaged in a junkyard. With the ports didn't line up right, they were bent. And I finally went with the Chinese made one that was not the most expensive, and it lined up perfectly. So I think maybe you could see the connector from here. Anyhow, thought I would contribute this to the community. Don't be afraid of changing out your air compressor yourself for the AC compressor down here. It's really just a couple 13mm bolts. Take the belt off. And then it's like a real weird combination of Torx bolts, but it's got one over here and I think two, and then what you reinstall, they'll send other bolts. And then definitely change out the O-rings. But the trick, to me, the trick was buying the evacuator, the vacuum pump, and always use new oil every system that you work with. Replace that oil and let it run for, say, an hour, pulling moisture out of the system. It gets it really dry, and you'll just be very happy with how cold your AC system will be afterwards. And this was about 120,000, 110,000, I think I'm at. 109. And my compressor was just tired. It just didn't seem to really, it was leaking a little bit and tired. So I think I probably could have changed out maybe the clutch or something on it, but new unit altogether. I just had to wait a while between getting the proper one in, and be very, very critical looking at the unit to make sure it lines up exactly before you go trying to do the install. You will hate life trying to get the fittings on and so forth. One other thing you have to do is you have to remove, at least get this out of the way, which means unbolting it from the firewall, and there's like some 10mm bolts that are part of that are next to impossible to get at. I think I only put 2 back in, or maybe I did 3, but that has O-rings to change out as well. I think I got 3 different O-ring kits, but I think the real answer on that is go to the dealer and order
order the right O-rings at the dealer. I mean, it's kind of worth the hassle on that, because it's better material, I think, than the aftermarket, and you're assured that it's the exact right size. And so I did that on some of these other O-rings. I think this was the one that was really hard to get correct, this large one that's hold on by like a 50 Torx or something, just one bolt. Anyhow, the marvels of Audi engineering.